everyone. My name is John Delaney, and I'm the Commission's designated presiding officer for this hearing. Today is November 1st, 2023, and it's approximately 1:00 p.m., and this is the date and time that is scheduled for the evidentiary hearing on the application of Wanship Water Company LLC's request for a rate increase, docket number 23-067-01, and we're here to consider the settlement stipulation filed by the parties. Is that right? Okay, why don't we start with appearances for the applicant?
Grady Kohler, owner of Wanship Water Company.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kohler.
Good afternoon.
For the division?
Patrick Griecu, Assistant Attorney General representing the division, and the division's witness today is Mark Long.
Good afternoon, both of you. All right. Do you all have any preliminary matters you want to address? I have a couple, but if you have any, then why don't you raise them now? Otherwise, I'll just jump into mine.
We don't, no.
Okay. So let's please remember that there's a virtual public witness hearing this evening at 5 p.m. That will be virtual, so attendance will not be in person by anybody, including us, unless you all have a preference otherwise. I don't know what time this is going to end today, so you tell me now whether or not there is a preference to at least us convene back here in person and then host the virtual component from the public outside. Otherwise, the option is we conclude this part of the hearing, you go your separate ways, and you attend at 5 o'clock.
I think the division would be fine with it being completely virtual, so the parties not having to meet in the hearing room, so.
Great, and Mr. Kohler?
I agree.
Okay, so you both agree on that point? Okay, that's what's going to happen then. Okay, the second thing is I will note that the filing we received, I'll note the filing that we received yesterday afternoon regarding the, quote, corrected attachments, including a cover letter. Thank you for making that submission. I appreciate it. I had a bunch of questions. But I want to make sure we're on the same page right out of the gate on this. So I'm going to ask this. And I'm going to ask it to the division because you submitted it. Are those corrected attachments intended to completely replace, in their entirety, the previously filed exhibits 3 and 4 of Mr. Long's testimony and attachments 1 and 2 of the settlement stipulation as filed?
Yes.
Okay. And then, continuing on that same topic, the cover letter, which is dated October 31st, 2023, refers specifically to each attachment as a, quote, corrected, with a capital C, attachment, capital A, end quote. But the actual cover sheet of each attachment does not use the word corrected, just says attachment. That is consistent with what the settlement stipulation refers to them as, which is just as attachment. It doesn't say corrected attachment. So is the omission of the word corrected on the cover sheet of what was submitted last night intentional?
No, it's not intentional. The cover sheet for those must have been missing that correction to refer to them as a corrected attachment.
Do you have what you submitted in front of you?
Yes.
Why don't you just take a look to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes, yes,
Okay. So you're telling me that wasn't intentional?
correct.
That what was submitted last night and what you're looking at should have corrected in front of attachment on the cover sheet?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, well, you know me and a clean record. So, let's circle back to this at the end because, you know, at the end of the day, the value of a clean record is that We know that there might be people other than us who come and look at this. We also know that that might be years from now. And so what we don't want to do is make an already hard job harder for somebody in 6 years or 2 years or 10 years. I think we've seen some evidence of that in this case here. So I might have you refile those documents with the corrected cover sheet. But again, by motion or by notice, stipulated motion would probably be better. So that the record then, the docket reflects that these supersede anything. But let's hold off on that for now, because there might be some other things that, from a housekeeping perspective, that would need to be cleaned up, such that we can do it all in one thing. So that's my other preliminary matter on that. My other preliminary matter was on that point. But again, thanks for submitting what you submitted. It was helpful. Okay, that's all the preliminary things I have. Why don't we just get going? And Mr. Kohler, you're the applicant, and you're here on behalf of Wanship, the applicant. So let's go ahead and proceed. Why don't I swear you in? Mr. Grady Kohler, good afternoon. Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. You're sworn.
All right.
Please proceed.
Okay. So we have a small water company here located in Wanship, Utah, specifically a plat known as Wanship Cottages subdivision. I took this water company over the summer of last year. The previous owner, her name is Deanne, did her very best to run this company for about 40 plus years. And the last time they did a rate increase was about 35 years ago. Of course, expenses have gone up in the last 35 years, and I believe that one of the primary reasons that we haven't wanted to or tried to keep rates low is just to do that, to help the community and keep rates as low as possible. The last several years, the water company has lost approximately $30,000 to $50,000 every year, and we have a lot of deferred maintenance in a system that was originated sometime in the early 70s that we would like to eventually, hopefully, get fixed up to provide good, reliable, clean drinking water. Our process to go through this rate increase was really just to figure out what do we need to do to break even, and what do we need to do to have a little bit of funds for a rainy day if something breaks. And that's how we went through the process of doing that and figuring out our expenses and averaging those over the last 3+ years. And that's where we landed with our proposed rate increase. We gave notice in our billing early of this year. Bills went out in January with written notice that we were contemplating and going to go forward with a rate increase. We recently held a public open house after we came to kind of an agreement or stipulation at our what we call the pump house in Wanship. And overall at that meeting, we had really good community support and understanding. Nobody wants to see rates go up, of course, but the community came out. We had a great turnout. I'd say there was about 40 people, which is really good for a system that has about 35 connections. And everybody understood that what we were doing and generally supported the idea of a rate increase. I think the challenge is for us how big of a rate increase this is. Since it has been 35 years, we're going from $19 to, in our settlement, approximately $150 a month. So it's a massive, massive increase all at once. But some in the community put it the best way that, if you look back, they probably got a really good deal on water the last 35 years, and it just happens to hit them all at once right now. So that's my quick synopsis. And I will also add that since we've taken over the system, working with the Division of Drinking Water. We've removed nearly all of our points. The points are bad against the drinking water system. Gotten a lot of things up to compliance, and we're in great standing now with the Division of Drinking Water.
Great,
That concludes my summary.
thank you. Mr. Grieco, do you have any questions for Mr. Kohler?
I don't think we have any questions.
Okay. So just I do have a number of questions for you, but just out of the gate, well, you know what, I'm actually not gonna ask that, I'll just jump right in.
Yeah.
Because, I think there's some things I need to walk you through. I appreciate, the work you've done and your presentation here today. And I appreciate the parties, coming to an agreement to get this resolved so that clean, safe, abundant drinking water can be provided while maintaining the financial integrity of the provider of that water. But I want to go through a few things as it relates to the stipulation, relating specifically to Wanship. Do you have a copy of the stipulation, Mr. Kohler?
I do,
Okay.
and I'm pulling it up right now.
So just for everybody's orientation, we're going to be looking at paragraph 13A. And I call that the quarterly billing cycle request.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I have never seen what is in essence a petition baked into a stipulation. Usually it would be a separate standalone thing that would be agreed, that would be granted and then baked into the stipulation. But I understand what you're trying to do, so let's see if we can get there. I want to treat it kind of like an oral motion, Mr. Grieco, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a number of questions of Mr. Kohler to get foundational stuff under oath so that the commission has a legitimate evidentiary basis to make a determination on the request. We're on the same page? Okay. And you'll be patient with me because I'm going to ask these questions. They may seem very pedantic, but just answer the questions if you can. Okay, so Wanship requests the commission to allow it to bill its customers quarterly, correct?
Correct.
And I'm going to do it leading so it makes it faster. You understand that the division supports this request, correct?
Correct.
Wanship understands that the Utah administrative rules require it to bill its customers at least every 2 months, correct?
Correct.
Wanship thus seeks an exemption from this at least every 2-month billing requirement, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you understand that the division supports that component of your request, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Wanship seeks to send out billing statements 4 times per year, or every 3 months, versus 6 times per year, or every 2 months.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. Okay, so in theory, because the water service here is not metered, every Wanship customer will be charged the same amount, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so regardless of how many, or regardless of when the billings will occur, tell me how many bills Wanship would send out in any given billing cycle.
Approximately 35 customers, so 35 billings per quarter.
Okay. And I think you just answered this question, but for the record, so does that 35 number of bills correspond to the number of customers
Yes.
that Wanship has? Okay. How will Wanship send these bills to these 35 customers?
We hope to do it digitally to save money. So via emails, we've collected emails from nearly all customers by now. There are a couple that we don't have, and those will still have to go out through the U.S. mail.
Okay. So email or US mail? Hand delivery?
No.
Okay. Okay, here's where it's an open-ended question. please state every fact that Wanship claims demonstrates that sending out customer bills 6 times per year constitutes an undue hardship to it.
We don't have any employees in the company. If we had employees or full-time staff to deal with billing, that would increase our costs, and that would just further put a burden on our customers, which we feel is unfair and a burden for the company to have an employee that wouldn't make sense for us financially. So with quarterly billing, we can scale that back and have part-time hired 1099 employees that can help us with our billing every quarter.
Okay, and a 1099 couldn't be used for the same purpose of sending out bills 2 times more per year?
It certainly could be used for that. It would just, no matter how frequently we increase our billing, the costs go up every time we increase our billing frequency. So we've really looked to reduce our costs as much as possible.
Okay. Any idea what that cost would be?
Yes, we've built it into our pro forma. Hold on, let me tell you. We are estimating our accounting fees to be $1,500 a year. Much of that is our billing.
And that's based on your request for quarterly billing, or,
Yes, correct. Request for quarterly billing.
okay, so what would be the cost difference between quarterly billing and that number and every other month billing?
I would approximate that it would go up around $500 a year, and that may not sound like a lot, but it is for a small water company.
Okay, thank you. So what about cash flow issues? Can Wanship's monthly expense structure absorb the delay in revenue that doing it this way is going to create?
Yes, it can. Historically, for the last 20 years, customers have volunteered to pay annually. So it's become more commonplace that customers will actually pay their entire year's bill in one check. Now, granted, that was $19 a month, so it's much cheaper than it would be today. And this is why, in working with our customers, we've landed on quarterly billing. Seems to be the most logical approach.
Okay. Great, that's that component of the rule. Now let's look at the other one, and I think you just testified to it, but you're probably going to have to repeat it when I ask you the specific question as to customers. But let me ask you this. State every fact that Wanship claims demonstrates that sending out customer bills 6 times per year is only of limited benefit to the customers. How are the customers benefiting from this?
Our customers have historically appreciated actually our annual billing, but with the rate increase, I believe that would be difficult for many of our customers to be able to afford now all at once. So they're used to it. Some of these are second homes. It's harder for them to manage these and have annual bills. So we feel that it saves them time and it saves us time. And the bottom line is it saves our customers money because it's saving us a little bit of money.
Well, and I want to be clear, the rule requires every 2 months, not every year. And if people are electing to do it every year, I guess that's their choice. But if you were to follow the rule, as opposed to this exemption, how does not following the rule and doing it every quarter in comparison to every other month, how does that benefit the customer?
It would reduce Wanship's water expenses and keep our rates as low as possible.
Okay, thank you. What about a customer cash flow issue? And I'm going to articulate this way. Hit is my term for lack of a better phrase. So do you know whether Wanship's customers can handle being hit, for lack of a better word, with, say, a $640 bill versus a $480 bill, which represents roughly 2 months versus, or 3 months versus 2 months?
I can't speak to the cash flow of all of our customers. All I can speak to is that we've brought up the quarterly billing. It came up at our open house, and it seemed to be supported by our customers.
Okay, and of your 35 installed base, how many people were at that open house? You may have said this, but I didn't hear it. How many people were there?
We had a good turnout. I would say approximately a third of our customer base was in attendance.
Okay. Okay, does the division have any questions with, I'm finished with my line. Do you have any questions for this witness on this particular request?
No questions.
Okay, so based on the testimony you just heard, which is nowhere else, do you have any objection to this request?
No objection.
Okay. I'm going to have some questions for you, Mr. Long, when you testify on this same thing. So we'll move on to the next question, which is the service area request. Kind of, I don't know how to articulate it, but it's again, paragraph 13, specifically 13B. And one way to articulate it is that we want to establish from this day forward, or from the order's effective date forward, the actual service territory or area, because there's some question about historical records. So addressing that, I'll be candid with you. You know, this request in a stipulation actually strikes me as much more significant than the one we just discussed, because it potentially involves people or entities that aren't just Wanship or its customers. It involves potentially third parties. We just don't know that yet. We might find out, but I still think it makes some sense to go through the same line of questioning to establish from an evidentiary perspective, under oath, what would be helpful to give the commission to be able to make a decision on this request. Okay, so the application provided an attachment 22, and that attachment was titled Service Area Map. We familiar with that exhibit?
I am.
Or attachment?
Yes.
Okay. So if this is the service area map, why do we need a different service area map? I mean, let me ask this way. Why was exhibit 20, attachment 22 submitted?
I think when we went through the straight case, we realized that we couldn't find a good defined service area on record from the early 70s. It was generally conveyed through the past documents that it's the same service area that we have today. So we were simply clarifying what our service area is at this time.
Okay.
But we're not changing it.
Okay, well, let's look at exhibit 22, or attachment 22 to the application. Is it your testimony here that that is in fact not Wanship Water Company LLC's current service area? And take your time.
Yeah,
And take a look at it.
I need to pull it up. Give me a second.
That's fine. And I will tell you, you can feel free to compare it to that which is the proposed service area.
Okay, just so I'm clear, which one are you looking at right now?
One what?
What document? Sorry.
It was your attachment 22, and it's titled Service Area Map. It's a PDF.
Mm-hmm.
Attachment
2. Okay, thank
No,
you.
22.
22.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And if it's helpful, you could also go to the the PSC's website and look at the docket. It has what you filed.
Okay, I am on the docket.
Okay. So you submitted, we have a zip file And if you look at your filing, there'll be 3 entries, and I think the middle one is the zip file. And if you open that, within that zip file is what's called attachment 22, among others. Division, are you with us here? Okay.
I'm sorry, just to expedite the speed of me finding this, to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, that's fine. Take your time.
What date was this filed on? So I can quickly find this on, because
I'm sorry, I don't know that, but if you're on the dock, it would be the very bottom entry, May 25.
Thank you.
Do you see that date on the docket?
I do, thank
Okay.
you. Okay, now I'm with you. Attachment 22.
Got it, okay.
Okay, I'm
And what is
looking at
that
the same
titled?
thing.
Service area map?
Yes, this is Wanship Cottages service area.
Okay. Okay, so my initial question was, why'd you file this? I mean, what was the purpose of submitting this? And,
I think we submitted this, if I recall, back to May, because that was one of the items we needed to file. It was required to file with the rate case, which was a copy of our service area map.
got it, okay, so we are on the same page. So the question then becomes, is this the service area map? Or there's a different service area map attached to what has been submitted for purposes of the stipulation.
I think, Mark, I could be wrong, but
I'll ask
Okay.
Mr. Long this, but I'm asking
Sorry.
you this. So your testimony is you submitted this as your service area map.
this is our service area,
Okay.
correct?
And I'll ask you then to go ahead and look at the stipulation, or attachment 2. And let me direct you to that. Are you looking on the docket?
Yes,
Go to, there was a filing dated October 31st, so it'll be the last one on the docket, so at the top.
and it's corrected attachment 2?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, and go to page T11.
yes.
Okay. So I see a difference between what you submitted as attachment 22 service area map that you've now testified is your service area with page T11 of attachment 2. So which is your service area?
The first one.
Okay. And the first one, you mean exhibit or attachment 22 that you filed with the application on May 25th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That's actually really important testimony because at the end of the day, I need to walk you through these things so that if we are going to still clear this up to the extent there's any confusion, that we're working from the correct document. Okay. Okay, so the stipulation provides at page 5, paragraph 13B, quote, "The company states that, to the best of its knowledge, this proposed service area map represents the true and original boundaries of the service area, and no other water companies or water service areas are adjacent or close to Wanship's service area." That's in paragraph 13B of the stipulation. As you've just testified to, the service area map that is referred to in the stipulation is exhibit or attachment 22 that was originally filed according to your testimony, correct?
I'm sorry, we got to ask that question again.
Do you have the stipulation up?
Yes.
Okay. The quoted language I just read refers to proposed service area map. And I'm just clarifying for the record that attachment 22 is what is being referred to with the use of the phrase proposed service area map, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and it says that to the best of your knowledge. So what did you or Wanship, or did you have somebody do on behalf of Wanship to gain the best of its knowledge?
There are no close water companies to ours. There's just none that exist.
Okay, let's break it down. Where did you look? What records did you consult? Who looked? When did you do this? So go ahead and tell me that. How, you say there's no, that's the conclusion, that there's no adjacent or close water service, water companies or water service areas. How did you make that determination?
We looked at the Division of Water Rights map to determine what other water companies are close, and there are none.
Okay. Anything else? Is that all you did, or did you do anything else? I mean, really, give me everything you did.
Yeah, so that as far as formal documentation, that is probably our best, is that the Division of Water Rights does not have any other drinking water utilities within our near proximity. The other way that I know is just over time, running this water company for the last year and a half, is there's never been any confusion, and the closest other water company, it does have a very similar name, but it's on the other side of I-80 from us. So the only calls that we get are either for our water company or that water company on the other side of I-80. There's no close connections, there's no shared water lines, we don't cross each other's lines anywhere. So that's how we know.
Okay, thank you. If there's any other way that you went about making this conclusion, state it now while you're under oath, because more is better. But if you don't have anything, I understand.
That's all I have.
Okay. One idea I had is that in the application you filed, there is a reference to the drinking water report, and I'm not quite sure exactly what that is, but the box that you checked when you attached, I think, attachment 22. The box, actually, it reads, the number of connections approved, comma, and the current area served may be shown by the service area map. And then it says parenthetically, this information should be in your CPCN or in your drinking water report. Now, I think you've testified that we don't know where the original CPCN is. What about drinking water report? Did you look there to see if anybody else was a close or adjacent water company?
I believe what we're referencing there was a lead-based line report that was done, and that was done through an engineering firm to help determine what houses on our system may contain lead or lead within our lines. That was outlined, and that is another, unofficial map, if you will, of our drinking water system.
Okay. But it's just of yours, it's not of the adjacent or potentially adjacent?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, then you've done what you've done, you've testified about what you did, and I threw one out that didn't apply, so thank you. All right, let's continue then. Okay, so do you testify under oath today that this proposed service area map, which we've identified as attachment 22 to your application, represents the true and original boundaries of Wanship's service area?
I do.
Okay. So do you also testify under oath today that no other water companies or water service areas are adjacent or close to Wanship's service area as reflected in what has been referred to as Attachment 22.
I do.
Finally, do you also testify under oath today that this proposed service area map, 22, Attachment 22, does not expand into the territory of any other certificated water company?
I do.
Okay. Does the division have any questions for this witness on this issue?
No questions from the division.
Okay. Any objection generally to the request based on the new testimony you've heard today?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. And I will have some follow-up questions for Mr. Long later. I think I'm finished, but one second. Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you very much for your help. It's been helpful.
Thank you.
Division, would you like to call your witness?
Thank you. The division would like to call Mark Long.
Good afternoon, Mr. Long. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Do you
Good.
swear to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
Wonderful. You're sworn. Please proceed.
Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, Mark Long, MarkLong.
And what is your position at the division?
I'm a utility technical consultant,
And what's your business address?
160 East, 300 South, in Salt Lake City.
And have you participated in this docket on behalf of the division?
Yes,
And did you review the company's application for a rate increase and its pre-filed testimony and exhibits?
yes, I did.
Did you prepare and cause to be filed your direct testimony and exhibits 2.1 through 4 that were filed on September 27th, 2023?
Yes,
Do you have any corrections to any of those?
I believe that the stipulation and the testimony refers to the red line tariff as attachment 1, and when it got filed, it was shown as exhibit 3. And likewise with attachment 2, it was, for the clean tariff, it was shown as exhibit 4. But with the latest filing yesterday, I believe they're called attachment 1 and 2 again, although should have been corrected attachment 1 and 2. And so those should jive more closely with the testimony and the stipulation.
Okay, let me just recharacterize that and get a yes or a no. So anytime your testimony refers to the tariffs, your intention now is that those references be to corrected attachment 1 and/or corrected attachment 2 as submitted by filing October 31st.
Yes.
Thank you. Continue.
Want me to go over the other changes?
And what exactly were those changes as far as what was in corrected attachment 1 and corrected attachment 2?
Okay, exhibit 3 or corrected attachment 1, which is the red line version, when you go down to about the middle of it where they have the clean version, it lists the tariff as tariff number 31. It should be tariff 3. And that was one of the corrections made. Also in that same attachment, we changed the effective date from December 15th to December 1st.
And what changes were made to the corrected attachment 2 that was submitted?
Somehow, and I'm still confused as to how I did this, but it has the original tariff, like 24 pages of the preliminary one that we did. Those all need to be removed from pages T1 through T23. And I apologize for that. I'm still at a loss. Also, we changed the effective date from December 15th through December 1st.
And why was there a change in the effective date to December 1st?
Primarily because we moved the hearing up 2 weeks, and we're hoping that giving the commission 30 days, they would be able to issue an order by December 1st.
Do you adopt those filings with those stated corrections as part of your testimony today?
Yes.
At this point, I'd like to move for the admission of Mr. Long's testimony in the exhibits 2.1 through 2.10, which were filed on September 27th, 2023.
Thank you. Any objection, Mr. Kohler?
No.
Okay. I'm going to hold off granting the motion because there may be a few other corrections that need to be made, and I think that might be cleaner.
Okay.
But noted. Okay.
On that note, I'll go ahead and make this motion anyway, but we may be delaying it as well. I'd also like to move to admit the division's corrected attachment 1 and corrected attachment 2, the corrected tariff versions that were filed October 31st, 2023.
Let's park that one too.
Okay. Mr. Long, did you have an opportunity to review the?
Pardon me, hold on a second.
Sorry.
Do you have any objection to that motion, Mr. Kohler?
No.
Okay. Subject to that, we'll park that.
Okay.
Thank you.
While we're at it, I'll make one more. Move to substitute the corrected attachment 1 and 2 for the originally filed versions of the tariff that were a part of Mr. Long's direct testimony and the settlement stipulation as attachment 1 and 2.
Can you read that back?
While I'm at it, I will make one more. Move to substitute the corrected attachment 1 and 2 for the originally filed versions of the tariff that were a part of Mr. Long's direct testimony and the settlement stipulations as attachments 1 and 2.
Thank you. Mr. Kohler, do you have an objection to that motion?
No.
Okay. That motion I'll grant because anything we do with what was submitted on the 31st might override this motion. But yes, I'll grant this motion.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Long, did you have an opportunity to review the settlement stipulation and the corrected attachments that the parties agreed upon in this docket?
Yes.
Based upon your experience as an analyst for the division and the information in the pre-filed testimonies and exhibits, do you believe that the approval of the settlement stipulation and the latest revised tariff would be just, reasonable, and in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
Do you have a summary to share that provides the division's position in your testimony in support of the settlement stipulation?
Yes.
Please proceed.
On behalf of the division, I request that the commission approve the file stipulation regarding Wanship's application for a general rate increase. I'll start by providing a little background information. Wanship filed this request for a general rate increase on May 25th, 2023. The company has not requested a rate increase for approximately 35 years. Its last rate increase was in 1988. Division records show no informal or formal complaints have been filed with the commission or the division against Wanship for at least the past 10 years. With that background, the division has reviewed Wanship's application for a general rate increase and the numerous supporting exhibits. The division also received additional information by reviewing the company's responses to the division's informal data requests, many emails, texts, phone calls, and virtual meetings. The division analysis shows that the company's current rates are no longer just and reasonable, as the rates no longer cover fixed costs. The division filed its direct testimony on September 27, 2023. Subsequently, the division and the company entered into settlement discussions in anticipation of reaching a settlement. On October 11, 2023, the division filed an unopposed motion to vacate the procedural schedule and change the hearing date from November 15, 2023 to today, November 1st, 2023. The commission granted this motion on October 12th, 2023. The discussions between the company and the division led to a negotiated settlement agreement that was filed with the commission on October 17th, 2023. I'll specifically address 3 paragraphs of the stipulation that the division believes are of particular importance. Paragraph 12, 13A, and 13B. Paragraph 12, Table 1, presents a new rate model, including rates, fees, and other charges that cover all costs, funds a reserve account, covers projected taxes, and provides Wanship an opportunity to earn a return on its investment in infrastructure. Paragraph 13A addresses the billing cycle for Wanship. Wanship requests authorization to use a 3-month or quarterly billing cycle instead of the not more than 2-month billing cycle as required by Utah Administrative Rule 746-200-4A. The Commission has the authority to waive its rules under R 746-200-1F2, and the company requests the Commission to do so and grant its requested billing cycle. The billing cycle set forth in rules would create an undue burden on Wanship due to unnecessary labor and postage costs. The division supports this request and recommends that as long as Wanship does not individually meter its customers' water use, it should be allowed to use a quarterly billing cycle. However, if the Commission grants Wanship an exemption from the billing cycle rule, the division also recommends that the company and the Commission revisits Wanship's exemption from the rule if the company starts to meter each customer's water usage. To accomplish this Commission review, Wanship and the division, individually or jointly, could seek a tariff change if appropriate. Paragraph 13B, the division also wishes to bring to the Commission's attention the service area map on page T11 of Tariff 3. According to its available records, the division notes that previous dockets, including the company's original 1977 tariff and docket 77-067-01, do not include a copy of its service area map. The company states that to the best of its knowledge, this proposed service area map included in Tariff 3 represents the true and original boundaries of the service area, and no other water companies or water service areas are adjacent or close to Wanship's service area. The division recommends that the Commission adopt this map as the official service area map for Wanship. In summary, as previously stated, Wanship has not had a rate increase since 1988, approximately 35 years ago. The company has been operating at a loss for years and borrowing money to stay afloat. The division is mindful of the magnitude of the recommended increase and its likely effects on customers. Such increases may be frustrating to customers. However, a reasonable rate is needed for Wanship to provide safe, adequate, and reliable service. The recommended rates are reasonable given operating conditions and expenses. The rate structure as proposed, in addition to providing full cost funding, will provide additional funds in Wanship's capital reserve account, which will help the company with repairs and replacement of an aging infrastructure. The division concludes that the criteria for a settlement, according to Utah Code Section 54-7-1 have been met, and that the evidence contained in the record supports a finding that the settlement proposal as a whole is just and reasonable in result and in the public interest. Therefore, the division recommends the commission approve the stipulation filed with the commission on October 17, 2023, and the amended red line and new tariffs included as corrected attachments 1 and 2 filed with the commission on October 31st, 2023, with both the stipulation and tariff to have an effective date of December 1st, 2023. And I guess they really weren't filed as corrected versions, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we'll clean that up at the end.
Okay, gotcha. That concludes my summary.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kohler, do you have any questions for Mr. Long?
No, I do not.
Okay. Okay, I do have some questions, and I think we will start with kind of the same concepts that I addressed to Mr. Kohler, but we'll start with the first one last, which is we will start with the service map area, and then we'll talk about the billing thing, and then there's some questions about the underlying support for the recommendation.
Okay.
On the service map area request. What was the division's, well, I'm just going to say, Mr. Long, on behalf of the division, what was your understanding of what exhibit or attachment 22 was when it was submitted with the application?
It's my understanding that that was what they thought their service area was, according to that map. When we started looking at it, it was unclear as to whether it included all the customers that have been being served water since the early 70s. And our attempt at making sure that it was all inclusive of all the customers being served was this Google map that they transposed the outline of the service area on. In looking at it closer, it almost looks like to me that one of the...
For the record, will you make clear so the court reporter can pick up what you're referring to as you're pointing?
Okay, I'm referring to the service area map that's attached to the tariff on page T11.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, the corrected attachment too.
Thank you.
Anyway, in looking at that map, it almost looks like the purple outline on the top between the two little nubs there maybe should be a little bit higher, which would be almost exactly the service area map that Mr. Kohler submitted as attachment 22 in his original submission. It was only our intent to make sure include everybody that's been served and was included as the customer since the early 70s.
Absolutely, I understand the intent. So I guess my original question was, what was your understanding of what attachment 22 was? And your testimony was that you understood that to be what Wanship believed was their service area map, correct?
At the time, I believe they believed that.
Okay. So, but now what I hear you saying is that attachment 22, according to your testimony, is not in fact accurate as their service area map. Is that correct?
Yeah, it may not be. We've had quite a bit of discussion about this, Mr. Kohler and I, and it was unclear whether it included that one company that on the map, it was on the upper, on the page T11. It was unclear whether it included that one residence right there. And we just wanted to make it clear that he's part of the service area and has actually been served for nearly 50 years.
Okay.
Maybe we took something that was easy and muddled it all up, I don't know, but that was our intention.
No, I understand that, but we have conflicting information for
Okay.
a very specific request. So you've answered my question. I do want to dig in a little bit, though, because your written testimony says there's no copy of, it basically says this on page 15. There's no copy of Wanship's service area map in the division's records, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with that reference to the division's records, does that mean the files, whether hard copy or electronic, that are maintained within the division's office?
I believe within the office, I also had a customer service representative look at anything she could find electronically, and she couldn't find anything either.
Okay. Okay. Did you look or have this person help, who was helping you look in archives, whether on-site or off-site?
No, I didn't. At the time I had her look, I don't think there would have been time to go to archives and look for it, but I did not.
Understandable. This is just helpful for me to understand, especially since we have some conflicting information. We've got testimony that 22 is good, and we've got testimony that 22 might not be good. But the intention is for it to be good. So we've got a conflict. And so I just want to run to ground where we might find, where you looked to try to find what might show what is exactly accurate.
Okay.
Okay. You also testify that Mr. Kohler indicated to you that, according to his research, no other water companies or water service areas are adjacent or close to Wanship's service area.
That's correct.
Okay. We heard his testimony on that. Other than him indicating that to you, did you do anything to verify the accuracy of that statement?
No, I just want to add one thing. I believe that Mr. Kohler indicated that he talked to, is it Deanne Gary that owned the company for maybe 40 years, and she wasn't aware of anything either.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's all I have for you on that. Thank you.
Okay.
How about the billing cycle exemption? Let's talk about that quickly.
Okay.
You heard Mr. Kohler's testimony on that today. You provided in your testimony and in your live testimony and your pre-filed written testimony some explanation. So I want to ask you this. Do you have anything to add as to why requiring monthly or every other month billing would impose an undue burden on Wanship?
No, I'd have to refer to Mr. Kohler. I'm not sure if you were asking this question to him or if he misunderstood it, but typically we'd like to have monthly billing cycles. That way, if the customer is using a lot of water, it'll give them a signal and say, oh yeah, I'm using too much water, let me cut back the next month. Or if there's a leak, let me, they can find the leak a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And when you have customers that the water isn't metered, there's really no useful signal to the customer to bill it any more than quarterly.
Okay, so you jumped to the next one, which was limited benefits to the customer, but let's stay on this one. Undue burden. It's a term of art, so do you have any other information that you would use to demonstrate that this is an undue burden to send out bills 6 times a year instead of 4 times a year, so a total of 70 more bills, in essence, per year electronically? Do you have any other information that would support an undue burden finding?
No, other than to support Mr. Kohler's statement that, it's only $300, but $300 with only 34 customers is, quite a bit.
Okay, great. So then I was going to ask you, do you have anything else to add, other than what you've said in your testimony, in your statement today, your testimony you pre-filed, and in regards to Mr. Kohler's testimony, that requiring monthly or every other month billing results in Wanship's customers receiving no or limited benefits?
That's correct.
Okay, so nothing else to that?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, on those two things, I think I've gotten everything I can to try to make a request that's baked into a stipulation into something a little more formal as a part of the whole process that can
Okay.
have commission review. Okay, so now I want to talk about your pre-filed testimony. And this is why I parked that motion, is because you basically, you testified that there were some changes, you testified to those, but that there were no other changes. And what I want to preface this with is, I'm very sensitive to the fact that the parties have worked hard to reach an agreement on this. And it's the best way to resolve things, I think. And the agreement is on the ultimate fees, the rates, the terms, those sorts of things that are reflected in the work that's been submitted and the settlement stipulation.
Okay.
But the rationale that supports the numbers is supported by actual numbers, right? And that's in your testimony, correct? Okay. So the accuracy of those numbers is important. And because it benefits everyone to have a clean, accurate record, I want to address some of those with you, okay?
Okay.
So let's have you put in front of you, and Mr. Kohler, please feel free to bring this in front of you as well, your written testimony, the narrative at this point. And I'm trying to break out the exhibits so you don't have to toggle back, so just your
Okay.
testimony.
Okay.
Okay, so on page 6, lines 148 to 149, you state that Wanship requested $5,000 per year as a capital reserve, for its capital reserve account. Do you see that?
Yes.
I can't find that anywhere. Where was that request made? I looked at the application. I looked at what is in essence the filed testimony. So where did that come from? Is that part of your communications offline?
It could have been, or could that have possibly been in one of your analyses, Mr. Kohler, that, the profit and loss one I'm recalling?
Let me ask the question. So do you know where that came from?
Well, I know we talked about it verbally, but I also believe it's in writing somewhere as well from
Okay.
him.
This will be easy. Mr. Kohler, do you have any reason to dispute that testimony that there was a $5,000 request for the capital reserve account? Just the request was made.
It was, and Mr. Long was correct, it was in writing, it was in our P&L numbers.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's look at table 1 now. This is, again, in your narrative.
Okay.
It's on page 8. And I've made this joke before that, I went to law school, they said there'd be no math, and they didn't tell the truth. Other lawyers in the room can testify to that. So on table 1, it says current rates, fees, and charges amounts. Do you see that column heading?
Yes?
I want to clarify this because I think I figured it out, but there are 2 fees. One is titled Reconnection for Unauthorized Use Fee for $150, and the other is Seasonal Turn-On and Turn-Offs Fee for $25. You see those?
Yes.
Okay. I do not see those in Mr. Kohler's direct testimony where he lists what is the existing and proposed rates. But I do see those in what is the still current tariff. Is that where those 2 numbers come from in your table 1?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's look at table 2. Next page.
Okay.
This is where you're gonna have to be really patient with me. And again, I know you reached a settlement and that you've arrived at a final number, but what I need to do is make sure the record reflects accurately the rationale and the numbers that support where you ended up. Okay, table 2, page 9. The column with the heading Rates, Fees, Charges Requested by Wanship amounts, the far right column, you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And the word requested is obviously operative, and so I'm comparing it to that which was Mr. Kohler's written testimony,
Okay.
okay? So I'm looking at them side by side. And what I see is, I get confused, because if I look at these numbers, are they monthly?
Yes,
Okay, that's what I figured. So if you look at unmetered water for connected customers, carried all the way over to $90.75, that represents a monthly number, right?
right.
Okay. Okay,
as well as a 19 does, so to keep the,
okay. Well, okay. So as I compare your numbers in this column in Table 2 to Mr. Kohler's direct testimony with his proposed rates, otherwise requested rates,
yes,
they don't translate. So, for example, if you take $90.75 per month and times that by 3 months, that is $272.25. Mr. Kohler's application or direct testimony proposed $363 per quarter. So I'm not following, and maybe the answer is
I,
requested, where did these requests come from? Because it's not translating all the way down.
I think once again, it probably came from the spreadsheet, the profit and loss spreadsheet that had all the complete numbers on there. I'm not sure if it got translated to his written testimony or not, but that's what I used as requested by. Is that true, Mr. Kohler?
Let me park this for a second. Let me ask you this question. So I want to orient you, Mr. Kohler. If you look at Mr. Long's written direct testimony, that's what we've been talking about, which is Table 2 on page 9 of Mr. Long's testimony. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. The comparison that I'm trying to draw here is in your application of May 25th, 2023, not in the zip file, but I don't know, is it in the zip file, Melissa? I think it may be a separate entry.
I have it in front of me.
Okay, and it says testimony of Grady Kohler, comma, owner, comma, May 25th. Is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. So you have proposed rates as a column. You see that in the far right corner?
Yes.
And then you have on unmetered water, $363 per quarter.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you were to divide that by 3, which would be therefore a monthly rate.
Yes.
Doesn't your math say that would be $121?
Yes.
Okay. So if you were to compare $121 as a monthly rate to Mr. Long's Table 2 of $90.75, do you see that comparison?
Yes.
Mr. Long, as I understand his testimony, is saying that your $363 number is not where he drew the requested amount from. Is that consistent with your understanding?
It's 90.75 times 3.
Yes, my testimony to our request is actually, I believe, accurate, because that does also flow through to the spreadsheet that we've discussed, and those two numbers do match up.
Okay. What two numbers?
The spreadsheet P&L, which was entered in our original application for the rate increase, and my direct testimony to the rate increase, those numbers are the same.
Okay.
Your math is correct.
Okay.
21.
Thank you. Did you understand that testimony?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Okay. So I think where we were going was that you believed that your $90.75 number came from something other than what I'm comparing it to, which is the direct testimony. So I'd like to get this straightened out.
I think I can make it easy for you.
Okay. And again, I understand you all have reached an agreement. I understand you all have come to an agreed upon rate. But I want to test the rationale. Please testify as you see fit.
Okay, I'm looking at the profit and loss statement that I referred to, and I see now that the break-even cost per quarter is a $362.82, which divided by 3 would be the 121.
Okay.
I'm not sure where I got the $90 or whatever that.
$90.75.
Yeah,
Well, so, I mean, without going chapter and verse here, I've got to tell you that if what Mr. Kohler just testified to is accurate, which is all of the numbers that he has listed in his direct testimony of May 25th in the proposed rate column is accurate, and that accuracy then translates into the P&L that you just testified about, all of the rest of your numbers in Table 2 don't follow Mr. Kohler's testimony. And so what I'm going to suggest is I wonder if this odd error that happened that you just testified about, the $90.75 example, doesn't carry through each of them below the $90.75. And let me tell you why I think that's important. Because you just testified that what you saw in the P&L, the break-even number, is built on a bigger number,
yeah,
right?
yes.
And while we end up at 153.50 ultimately on table 4, for example, is the agreed upon rate.
Uh-huh.
My concern is that 153.50 may have been built around something like $90.75, an erroneous initial number. Do you understand my concern?
No, I understand what you're, yeah.
Yeah, and so it just gives me some pause to understand whether or not, because I do have some questions about this 153.50 number anyway.
Okay.
I'll get there, but I'm wondering, is it giving you any pause, sir?
Not as much. We typically don't come up with the rate that the water company does. Ours is usually typically higher,
Yeah,
and so I'm not sure, where he got all these numbers from, but it doesn't surprise me that it's way different.
okay. Okay, and that's fair enough, because when we get to where I have these questions about the 153 number, 153.50 number, then maybe we can address this.
Okay.
So I guess I want to give you a chance, though. You testified earlier that there was no other corrections you wanted to make to your testimony. This is an obvious correction that you could make if you wanted to make it. If you don't want to make it, you don't have to make it.
I could, although I'd like to delve into it a little bit more and find where I got these numbers from. They came from somewhere.
I figured you'd say that.
In one of his exhibits,
Yeah. I figured you'd say that. And I'm not quite sure how to handle that at the end of the day, because, we do have an agreement in the number that it was going to be agreed upon. And I guess if you can testify here today, as we look at Table 2, that the numbers in the far right column did not necessarily inform as a basis for you to arrive at the ultimate settlement numbers that you guys reached.
that's true, although,
Just answer that question, then go, and then
can
tell me.
we say it again, please? Ask that again.
Would you read that back, please?
have an agreement and the number that was going to be agreed upon, and I guess if your testimony, if you can testify here today,
Stop. If you can testify here today, here's the question right after this.
Okay.
you can testify here today as we look at table 2 that the numbers in the far right column did not necessarily inform as a basis for you to arrive at the ultimate settlement numbers that you guys reached.
And that's correct.
Okay, great. Then let's move off of that at this point, but please, you were going to say something, please say it.
Why don't I want to say it now?
Oh.
Maybe it was a,
If you need a minute, if you want to talk with your lawyer, that's fine. If you just need to take a break, that's fine too.
Could we have a 5-minute break?
Absolutely, yeah, let's 2:25 by that clock? Off
Thank
the
you.
record. Thanks. So we're back in the record on docket 23-061-01, having taken a 5-minute break. I will begin by saying, I'll turn it back over to the division on what they wanted to discuss amongst themselves. And report back if anything.
Yes, let me clarify this.
Thank you.
I used the 363 number, like was discussed earlier, and I believe I saw a quarter, so I thought, oh, quarter, that's 25%, let's divide it by 4. And that comes up to the 9075. If you divide a quarter, which really has 3 months in it, by 3, it's the 121.
Okay.
So I was using the same numbers, just had a brain fart, I guess, and did it by 4 instead of 3.
Okay. The testimony that lives forever in infamy.
A brain glitch.
That's better. Thank you. Okay. Given that you believe that you have identified this error in your testimony, would you like to correct it?
I can, although it's not
You can do it,
instrumental on.
you can do it generally by explaining that what you just testified about applies to everything in your column.
The only thing it would possibly apply to is the standby fee, the second lot double fee. Everything else are charges, not rates, that would have been affected by dividing by 4 rather than 3.
Okay, so that's the extent of your correction to your testimony at this point.
Sure,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, I've got to ask you a question. Based on what you just testified about, if you'll look at table 2, the one-time fee, under one-time fees, you have first-time service connection fee of $3,000. Do you see that?
Yes,
If I look at Mr. Kohler's testimony, and the submission that he made with his proposed rates, I see the first-time connection fee as $5,000. Can you explain why those are different?
yes, we had quite a few discussions on some of his one-time fees and charges. And at the time, we kind of went through and we talked about them and said, 3,000 is more commonly used unless you can show otherwise.
Okay.
And we went through each one like that and discussed that. Somewhere in his, at least verbally, but I believe it's written down somewhere as well too. And we also went over these tables in detail.
And again, I respect the settlement, and I respect the work you've done to get to that.
And he did agree to all of these.
Yeah, and that's not my question. My question was, you testified that you didn't want to make any corrections. And so all I'm giving you an opportunity to do is make any corrections that you deem appropriate. And if you do not deem these to be errors, or if you don't deem them to be correctable, that's fine too. Just testify.
No, I'll stand by the numbers. They came either through negotiation or as a agreement between us as we were proceeding with the rate case.
Great. One last question on that exact point then. So you can testify here today, Mr. Long, that Mr. Kohler's direct testimony and the numbers that he has listed in his proposed rates column in that direct testimony is not necessarily the source that you got for your tables identifying what Wanship requested. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. If you'll flip over to page 11 of your testimony and look at table 4.
Okay,
There's a middle column, again, rates, fees, and charges requested by Wanship amounts. Do you see that?
yes, I do.
And those numbers that are in that column are simply represented the same way that we've just been testifying about with respect to column or table number 2, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, The source of those numbers were not
Not
necessarily
That's correct.
from, and just so the record can be clear, from Mr. Grady's, or Mr. Kohler's May 25th testimony.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Well, at least his written testimony.
Oh, I'm sorry, the May 25th,
Because he provided exhibits, other exhibits that would have had those numbers in
I'm
it.
sorry, the synopsis that lists the
Right.
proposed rates.
That's correct.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay. Now I would like to spend a few minutes with your exhibits, because I think this is really where a lot of the heavy lifting gets done, is in your exhibits.
Right.
In in Wanship's application filing, attachment 12 was a Department of Environmental Quality non-compliance letter dated February 1st, 2023. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I reviewed it.
Okay. So the question on that letter has nothing to do with where that stands. I couldn't find where that issue was specifically addressed in your exhibits as a cost. Is it something that is otherwise reflected in your exhibits, that there is costs that are going to be associated with that remediation or compliance?
As I recall, that number will either be in the loan amount that Mr. Grady has, or it would be possibly on Exhibit 2.3,
Uh-huh.
page 1 of 6.
Okay.
It might be included in line 21, 22, 23, 24. Those are the repairs that we amortized to include in rates, and some of those were to remedy drinking water's concerns.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's great. Let's look at Exhibit 2.2. And as I understand kind of the matrix, the chart, the total number of customer type here in this model uses 34 connected and 6 standby.
That's correct.
Okay. So the question is, where did 34 come from? And let me tell you why that's a question. Because Mr. Kohler's application testimony says 34, consistent. He testified today there were 35. The application attachment 8, which is the AR aging summary, lists 33. The application attachment 23 tab that says customers and water sold says 33. And then the drinking water division lists 30 residential, 49 transient, 28 residential. So my question to you is, given these different numbers that I'm seeing, how did you arrive at 34 for purposes of this model?
Well, I also think somewhere it lists like 89 connections too, so with all these different connections, I don't recall if I think I texted him and called him and said, hey, look, how many connections are there? We need to get an exact amount because it's very important on the rates. And he responded with the 34 and the 6.
Okay.
And I said, that's it, right? And he goes, yeah, those are the exact rates we have. So I don't know if he has billing for 35. I was kind of surprised when I heard that, but he's assured me it's 34 and 6.
Okay, because your model is built around these numbers. That's why you need firm
Exactly.
numbers. Okay.
Oh, yeah, and yeah.
Well, let's stay here. I might come back to Mr. Kohler on this. Because his application itself, let's talk about the standby, your model builds 6. The application itself says 0.
Right.
And none of the other sources that I just I didn't testify, that I talked about earlier, says anything about standby. So we've got a representation in the filing that there are 0 standby. But then through later conversations, your testimony is, no, it was raised to 6. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so based on that, you built your model.
I feel comfortable that those numbers are correct.
Okay. I'm going to do this now instead of jumping back, coming back. Mr. Kohler, you just heard this testimony from Mr. Long. What's your response?
One item to clarify is in our previous tariff, we did not have a standby customer billing.
Okay.
So that's probably some of the back and forth, is that we are now moving to the concept of having what is commonly referred to as a wet lot or a standby lot, a lot that we are providing water service to that lot, but there is perhaps not currently a cabin built on that lot or a house.
Okay.
So we didn't have that in our previous tariff, and we do now. Mr. Long is correct. We counted the number of possible standby lots, and that is 6.
Okay.
We currently have 36 customers in our database, to be precise, and that number has improved over time from 34. Because we went from back of napkin accounting and getting everybody actually correctly billed into our database. And so I'm currently looking at our QuickBooks and our customers in there, and we have exactly 36 as it stands here today.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Long, your numbers are off by 2. The effect of that on your model is generally speaking what?
Well, considering there's only 34 customers, 2 would make a difference. Although I might add, this commonly happens. We work with the numbers we're given at the time, and they're, water companies are growing and adding and subtracting, so I don't know how much you want to chase that on every rate case that you do.
Yeah, but my question is, what effect does that have on your model? And if the answer is, I'd like your answer, but if it is de minimis, or if it is significant, I'd like to know either way.
I'd have to plug the numbers in.
Okay. Does it change your conclusion that the rate is, as agreed to, is just, reasonable, and in the public interest?
Well, at this time, if there's 36, the numbers would change.
Mm-hmm. Will you read back my question to him, please?
Does it change your conclusion that the rate as agreed is just, reasonable, and in the public interest?
We can take a break if you'd like.
Yeah, I can go plug the numbers in and we can see.
Would that make you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I'm a numbers guy. That'd make me feel
Oh,
better.
that's fine. Can you do it in 5 minutes?
Sure.
Or will you need a little bit longer?
No, 5 should do it.
Oh, that's fine. Let's break until 1:45.
Okay.
Thanks. And before I get to you guys, I'm going to bounce over here for a sec. But we're back on the record in docket number 23-067-01. We took a 5-minute break to look over some numbers. But before I have the division follow up on what we were talking about before the break, I want to ask Wanship a question. You testified that there are 6 standby customers that otherwise were not covered by your current tariff, but will be covered by the proposed new tariff, correct?
Yes, that is our approximation. These have not been billed ever before or tracked, but this is our approximation of looking at the plat map and counting the number of possible wet lots that could be billed.
Okay. So given what you've just said, hypothetically, if this tariff goes into effect as proposed on December 1st, 2023, and if you were on a monthly billing cycle, you could start billing 6 different people or issuing 6 different bills for $38.50 per month.
Correct.
Okay. So that's built into the revenue stream as.
That's built into our pro forma.
Great, thank
Yep.
you. Okay.
Yes, yeah. Best case scenario. Yeah.
Thank you. If that's helpful, great. If not, please go ahead and follow up with what you were talking about earlier.
Okay, I went to plug the new numbers in, and before I had a chance to do that, Mr. Kohler came and said, no, the actual number of connected customers is 34.
Okay,
And he might be able to explain this better. Apparently, one customer was incorrectly entered, and the other one is actually a standby now, but maybe later will become a connected customer.
okay. No, that's okay. I won't ask him for an explanation on that because I'm really looking at your model. And that seems therefore to justify your model.
Okay.
Okay. But I want to continue to go through this based on what we just heard about standby customers. Because if we look at Exhibit 2.3, 2.3 on page 3 of 6, the total expenses as adjusted, so column, the far right column,
Yes,
is $65,296.95, right?
yes.
Well, if I do the math of 34 connected customers at $153.50 per month, I get a total of $62,628.
That's correct.
So there's a difference of minus $2,668.95. Their expenses are outpacing their revenue, just with connected and the expenses, right?
Okay, yeah,
And then if I add in the standby customers of $38.50 per month times 6 times 12, I'm still seeing expenses that outpace revenue. Is that accurate? Total expenses are outpaced by total revenue.
I don't believe so. If you were to refer to Exhibit 2.4,
Sure, great, thank you.
and if you refer to lines 6 and 7, I believe it has the calculations that you were just talking about, 34 customers times a monthly rate, and then annually is a 62,628. And then likewise for the standby customers. My spreadsheet here shows it comes up to 65,400. And then if you refer to the expenses, start on line 10, I show the expenses, including tax and everything else, is a $65,296. So there really is $100 over earnings there, which is minimal.
Okay. Thank you for orienting me on that point. I checked your math. Your math is accurate in 2.4. Except for, let me ask you one question. On 2.4, while we're there.
Okay.
Line 1 says connected customers, monthly rate of 152.50. In comparison to line 6, connected customers, 153.50. Why the dollar difference?
I had to separate those so I could correctly calculate the income tax based on this. It's kind of a backed-in number.
Yeah,
And so I had to show both of those so I can use one of the numbers for the income tax and the other to justify it. So it's separated like that.
so the dollar difference
Right.
is intentional.
Usually it's more than $1, but yeah,
Yeah,
in
but
this case.
it's a tax, it's the back-end
Right,
tax calculation.
right.
Okay, thank you. That gets a different question I had. Really close here. 2.3, I just want to check one narrative, exhibit 2.3.
Okay,
On lines 21 and, I'm sorry, lines 23 and 24, the narrative on page 5 of 6,
okay.
they're different headings. They're both contractual services. 23 is for miscellaneous repairs, pump house, upper well.
Yes,
Line 24 is install pump and equipment at the upper well. So different headings,
right.
but the narrative for each is exactly the same. Oh,
Well, they're
I'm
different
sorry,
amounts, I
the
believe.
numbers are different. The narrative to what is being done is exactly the same.
Correct.
That's intentional.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last exhibit is 2.9. You, on this exhibit, provide a return on investment of 10%, a rate of return of 10%.
Yes.
You see that? How'd you arrive at that? I don't see anything in the testimony, requested or otherwise, and I've seen other rates in recent cases that are very different. How did you arrive at 10%?
Typically with water companies, we use anywhere between 8 and 12%. To be frank with you, we don't do a lot of analysis, although I will say a rate case that's coming up that you're going to be hearing soon. We had the guy that that calculates the rates for the power companies. He looked at water companies, and although there's a lot more customers than this, it was around 10%. And, you know, we pull it out of the air between 8 and 12, and that's always been fairly, in past cases, have done some analysis, and it usually comes up to one of those numbers.
Let me try to figure out how to ask this question to get a simple answer. Your answer was appropriate, Mr. Long. I'm not questioning that. So based on what I heard, is it your testimony today here under oath that a 10% rate of return is in the public interest in this case?
Yes.
Okay.
And I want to clarify one thing. That's based on historical rate of returns that we've used. I maybe characterize it as pulling out of the air, but it is based on historical data and what's commonly used.
Okay, and that historical comparison, for lack of a better phrase, is based on similarly situated water companies?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's very hard to find any water companies this size to come up with any rate of return.
Okay. But there was no request for this 10% by the applicant, correct?
No,
Okay. And I say that because I have seen some other cases where the applicant has actually made a request, and that request tends to be lower than what an analysis might otherwise support. And here, your testimony is there was no request made,
right,
and your testimony is further that the 10% reflects historical knowledge that you have from other water cases.
yes.
Okay.
And I believe that the case you're referring to, they did request a lot less. If they wouldn't have requested that, we probably would have given them the 10%.
Okay.
But they wanted that to, that was all they felt they needed.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Mr. Kohler, do you have any follow-up questions for Mr. Long based on the questions and the discourse we had?
No, I do not.
Okay. Okay, so circling back, we've got three motions that are pending. Sorry, two motions that are pending. One that I'm going to ask somebody to make in a minute, but I'm trying to think about logistically how this is going to work. And I'm going to think out loud here for a second because what we have here now is a record that addresses questions relating to pre-filed testimony. And that further addresses the rationale underlying the numbers that were supported to reach the agreed-upon settlement, which is reflected then in a settlement and a stipulation. And that settlement and stipulation also have part of it, as part of it, two attachments. They might be named something else, but two attachments. And those attachments reflect the existing tariff as it exists now, the new tariff in red line as it may exist, and then the final clean copy of the non-red line final tariff. Does that all sound about right? Okay. Mr. Long's made any corrections that he wanted to make to his testimony, which included the motion, it also included the exhibits. So we had a motion for Mr. Long's testimony, pre-filed written testimony and exhibits to be admitted, correct? Okay. And I will ask again, any objection to that motion, Mr. Kohler?
No.
Okay. That motion also included a caveat as to the corrected stipulations. That is, as to exhibit 3 and 4, exhibits 3 and 4 in Mr. Long's testimony. Okay. That motion's granted. We also have a motion to admit into evidence the October 31st, let's call it the October 31st filing, which included the corrected attachments 1 and 2. However, those two exhibits or attachments are still not accurate. But I'm going to admit those, I'm going to grant the motion. But I'm going to make a request. So I'll grant that motion as well, to admit, the motion to admit the October 31st filings. Then I'd like somebody to move to admit the settlement stipulation, period, just as it was submitted. And then we'll deal with that in a minute.
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead and articulate it for the record.
I'd like to move to admit the settlement stipulation as filed on October 17th, 2023.
Any objection, Mr. Kohler?
No.
Okay, that motion is granted. Okay, and here's my request. So what we do know is that the final tariff, as you'd like it, doesn't exist in front of us in the form you'd like it to exactly exist. And the only difference is the cover sheet. You want it to say corrected as opposed to just attachment. You want it to say corrected attachment 1, corrected attachment 2. Everything else behind the cover sheet stays the same in each one of those attachments, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is file a stipulated motion that submits the 2 attachments with the correct cover page on each one. And I'd like the motion to indicate basically what's being done. So something to the effect that these 2 replacements, or these 2 attachments, replace any and all earlier submissions relating to the tariff. And if you want to parenthetically identify each time those were done, you can. And I also want you to say that that in this motion, what you're attaching is what is referenced specifically in paragraph 13 or anywhere else in the tariff, in the settlement stipulation. Do you see where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Because this will put a cap on everything, and it will tie it into the operative document, which is going to be the settlement stipulation. And then for purposes of the order, if the commission grants the proposal, then it'll be easy for a cross-reference purpose. And the reason I want you to do it by stipulation, if you can't, fine, but if you can, our rules require 15 days for someone to oppose it. And if there is no opposition because it's stipulated to, then we can do it more quickly. Do you have any idea what we're talking about?
Not really.
Okay.
Sounds good, though.
But you will speak with the opposing party, and if you can come to an agreement as I've outlined, great. If you can't, you don't have to. We'll just proceed from that position.
Okay.
Mr. Kohler, do you want to submit, would you like to make a motion to have admitted into evidence what you have otherwise filed with the Public Service Commission? Simply because you file it doesn't make it evidence.
Yes, I'll make a motion to submit what I have filed into evidence.
And I'm going to characterize that as the May 25th filing. Melissa, I'm looking at you, that's accurate? Okay. The May 25th filing with the Public Service Commission, that's, your motion is to admit into evidence that filing?
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
No objection.
No objection. Okay, thank you. That motion is granted. Okay, I believe that's it. So as we've talked about today, there appears to be three issues. There's the rate increase request, there is the billing frequency exemption request, and there is the service area map request. That's still open-ended in my mind. But is there anything else? Okay. Okay, we're mindful that the settlement stipulation seeks a December 1st effective date, and we'll do what we can. And if there's nothing else, we'll see everybody online at 5 o'clock. Thanks for your time.
Thank
See
you.
you then.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.